Is it possible that one of the best pilots in history is being dragged into the abyss by a defective car? What Lewis Hamilton lived in the 2025 SPA classification is not just a bad result. It is an alarming symptom. Are we witnessing the beginning of the end of your adventure in Ferrari? In Spa-Francorchamps, one of the most demanding circuits in the calendar and also one of the British favorites, Hamilton lived his second consecutive elimination in Q1. For any pilot it would be hard news, but for a 7-time world champion in a team like Ferrari, it is simply devastating. And it was not a marginal elimination. It was a public confirmation that something structural is not working. This is not a simple fall in form. It is a clear sign that the marriage between Hamilton and Ferrari is far from being synchronized. Beyond track performance, Hamilton's attitude reflects the seriousness of the moment. His statements after the classification were loaded with self-criticism, something rare in a figure that has historically handled the media narrative around their performance. He admitted without filters that his performance was unacceptable. He did not blame the team. He did not hide the problem behind technicalities. He apologized publicly, something that very few champions have made in the history of this sport. This gesture speaks of a deeply frustrated pilot, but also committed. The most shocking thing is that we are talking about a pilot who has dominated eras, who has built his legend overcoming adversities, and that, even in the worst moments with Mercedes, he maintained a minimal competitiveness. Here, in Ferrari, it seems to be swimming against a cargo with a car that not only does not respond but puts it ridiculous. And that feeling of impotence is enhanced in an environment like Maranello's, where media pressure, the symbolic load of the red uniform and national expectations are enormous. What was previously enthusiasm has now transformed into concern. The Tifosi hope to see Hamilton leading Ferrari towards glory, but instead, they see him caught in a cycle of errors, technical failures, and questionable decisions. The narrative changed in a matter of weeks. Of optimism contained to an uncertainty that threatens to break the morale of one of the most psychologically resistant pilots of the grid. And this is just the beginning of the season. Spa was not an isolated exception, but the crudest evidence that Hamilton has not found its place in Ferrari. It is not only about adaptation to the car or internal procedures. There is something deeper, a general disconnection between what the pilot needs and what the team can offer him at this time. A situation that, if not resolved soon, can lead to one of the greatest disappointments of his career and possibly one of the greatest strategic errors in Ferrari's recent history. The Ferrari SF25 was conceived as the great hope of the Scuderia to return to the top of Formula One in 2025, a car that should represent the culmination of years of technical evolution, with a specific approach to solve the problems of curve, traction, and low braking stability that had affected their predecessors. But what has been revealed so far is a car as unpredictable as inconsistent. And Belgium's career was the perfect scenario to expose, with crudeness, all its structural defects. The development of the SF25 was marked by a significant change in its rear suspension, a strong commitment of the technical department under the direction of Loic Serra, an engineer of recognized career that accompanied Lewis Hamilton from Mercedes to Maranello. This update was designed to solve the problems of dynamic march and balance height, which in the previous season caused not only loss of performance, but also chronic damage to the wear and tear of the tires. The new suspension was tested in Mugello during a filming day, and the simulations in the wind tunnel promised a half-second gain per lap. That figure, in terms of modern Formula One, is a revolution. However, when the theory faced the track, the result was bleak. The car not only did not improve, but worsened in key aspects. Hamilton's direct feedback was brutal. "It feels the same as before." A phrase that, coming from a pilot with his experience, is a technical and emotional sentence. The car does not convey confidence to the pilot. And in Spa, where a car is needed with a stable platform in high-speed sections and elevation changes, the SF25 showed the same erratic behavior that has characterized it since its debut. To this is added a new component installed for the first time in the Hamilton car, which had already generated controversy above. It was the same element that caused Charles Leclerc's accident in Montreal, when he lost control of the car inexplicably. Although Ferrari has not officially confirmed the nature of this component, the sources point to a piece integrated into the braking system that interacts with the ERS, energy recovery system, the conventional hydraulic brake, and the gearbox. This integration, far from stabilizing the car, has generated sudden blockages on the rear axle under certain loading conditions, creating an effect of disconnection between the pilot and the car. In other words, the car acts on its own at critical moments. This type of behavior is the worst enemy of a pilot in classification, where each millisecond counts and each error is paid with grid positions. Instead of trusting his car, Hamilton is fighting him. And that generates a vicious circle. The less control the pilot feels, the more he is forced to overcome with his technique, which increases the risk of errors, mental wear, and emotional disconnection. Internal frustration extends beyond performance. Technically, the team is divided. Some engineers believe that the problem lies in the base design of the car, while others attribute it to errors in the process of integrating updates. But the final result is the same. A car that does not respond, that does not improve, and that begins to cost much more than just points in the championship. It begins to cost credibility, time, and possibly the future of the most media association of the current Formula One. The relationship between a Formula One pilot and his car is more than a technical interaction. It is a deep sensory connection, a symbiosis that is based on mutual trust. When that trust is broken, as has happened to Lewis Hamilton with the SF25, the pilot not only loses tense for the return, it loses emotional control, mental balance, and, in the case of a competitor as demanding as Hamilton, to professional identity. In Spa-Francorchamps, this break became painfully evident. During the classification for the sprint race, on a track that requires surgical precision and absolute courage, Hamilton starred in a spin in the final chicane. It was a disconcerting moment not only because of its rarity but for the context. Hamilton is not a rookie, nor a pilot prone to make mistakes under pressure. The British himself said it clearly, "It is the first time in my career that I experience a rear block of this magnitude." This statement should have been an alarm signal for all Maranello. At this time, Hamilton is not competing against Max Verstappen or against Lando Norris. He is competing against his own machine. Against a Ferrari SF25 that, far from being his ally, has become his main adversary. A car that demands everything but returns very little. A silent partner who, instead of raising his talent, is dragging him towards the abyss of mediocrity. And in Formula One, when the car is not with you, you are alone. All alone. In the world of Formula One, the line that separates a rebirth from an absolute ruin is dangerously thin. The case of Lewis Hamilton in Ferrari represents one of the most fascinating and tense dilemmas of the 2025 season. Are we about to witness one of the most epic redemption stories of sport, or, on the contrary, we head towards the collapse of a project that was born with promises of glory and is being devoured by its own contradictions? Spa-Francorchamps can be remembered as a turning point. Not only because it was there that Hamilton lived the worst weekend since Ferrari joined, but because he highlighted all the cracks of a project that began with a powerful narrative but today staggers on each front. And yet, the story is not written yet. Ferrari has the resources. Hamilton has experience, talent, and competitive hunger. But what is missing is time, cohesion, and, above all, clear direction. The season is still young. There are still more than a dozen races ahead, including circuits where Ferrari has historically been competitive and where Hamilton has shown. But the margin of error has exhausted. Every weekend without points, each Q1 with elimination, each strategic error or technical failure not only delays progress, mutual trust erodes. And in a team like Ferrari, where external pressures are as intense as internal, trust is the fundamental pillar to sustain any hope of success. There are those who argue that this is just an adaptation process, that the union between Hamilton and Ferrari needs time to mature, to build common language between the pilot and engineers, to optimize the car in their style. But that vision, although valid, ignores the broader context. Hamilton is not a young developing talent. He is a champion in search of a final legacy. He did not come to Ferrari to learn. He came to win. And every race that does not bring it closer to that goal is a lost opportunity that cannot recover. At the other end of this tension, Ferrari also faces his own historical judgment. Bringing Hamilton was not just a sports decision, it was a statement of intentions. It was telling the world that the Scuderia was serious, that it was ready to lead again, not with long-term promises, but with immediate results. But what has shown so far is more of the same. A fast car in theory but fragile in practice, technical decisions that seem improvised, and an internal structure that still does not transmit total solidity. So is there a way to rebound? Of course, but it requires a radical transformation. It is not enough to expect the car to work better. Ferrari needs to align all its technical and human resources in one direction. You need to stop looking guilty and start building integrated solutions. You need to listen to your star pilot and translate your sensations into tangible improvements. And above all, he needs to rediscover the competitive soul that made this team great for decades. This is, therefore, a moment of truth. A crossroads in which much more than a season will be defined. The end of an era will be defined, the place that Hamilton will occupy in the history of Ferrari, and perhaps the competitive destination of Scuderia herself in this new stage of Formula One. Because in this sport, or you find the way you move forward, or you are trapped in your own labyrinth.